Hi everyone, my name is Emily Parker, and this is not just another sad wife story. It's the story of how I lost everything, my dignity, my faith in love, only to rebuild a life so grand that the man who once mocked me couldn't even afford to step into it. Before I begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and comment below where you're watching this from. Now let's begin. It happened on a night that was supposed to be elegant, perfect, a celebration of his success. The restaurant sparkled with gold chandeliers and the sound of expensive laughter. I sat beside him, proud, smiling, believing I was part of his world. I had spent hours getting ready, choosing the right dress, doing my hair, hoping he'd look at me the way he used to when we first fell in love. But then he raised his glass, smirked, and said, loud enough for the entire table to hear, "Some people marry for love, others just to have someone cook and clean." The room went silent for a second, and then came the laughter. His colleagues, their wives, even the waiter smiled awkwardly. My face burned. My heart dropped. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't hurt, but inside I shattered. I looked at him, searching for remorse, but he was too busy enjoying the joke he made at my expense. That was the moment everything changed. That was the night I realized I wasn't his partner. I was his entertainment. And I promised myself, silently, he'd never get to laugh at me again. When I met Ryan, he wasn't the man I know now. He was everything a girl could dream of, charming, ambitious, confident, with a smile that made every word sound like a promise. I still remember the first time he spoke to me. I was at a small cafe, sketching designs for a client, and he asked if he could sit at my table. We talked for hours that day, about art, travel, dreams, and how he wanted to build something big in life. He said I had a heart too pure for this world, and I believed him, because back then, I was the kind of woman who believed words more than actions. I was 26, passionate about design, full of life, and just starting to build my career. Ryan, on the other hand, was already successful, working in corporate consulting, wearing expensive suits, and driving cars I didn't even know the names of. I admired him, and slowly, admiration turned into love. He'd surprise me with flowers, text me, "I miss you," during meetings, and talk about our future, a big house, children, and me running my own studio someday. It felt perfect, almost too perfect. So when he proposed, I didn't hesitate. I said yes because love makes you see possibilities, not warnings. But soon after marriage, little things began to change. The man who once praised my passion started belittling it. When I came home excited about a design project, he'd laugh and say, "That's cute, Emily, but when are you going to find a real job?" He'd make fun of my friends, calling them dreamers. He started choosing my clothes, telling me what looked classy enough to stand next to him at company events. I told myself it was just adjustment, that maybe he wanted the best for me. I tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, supported his late nights. I gave everything I could to make our marriage feel like the dream we once shared. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He started comparing me to other women, his colleagues' wives, women who looked polished and carried designer bags. "Why don't you try to be more like them?" he'd say. Each word chipped away at the woman I used to be, confident, creative, and full of color. Still, I stayed. Because I thought love was about patience, about holding on even when it hurt. I kept believing that if I just loved him a little harder, he'd see me again. But I was wrong. I wasn't holding on to love. I was holding on to the memory of who he used to be, a man who never really existed. And that was my mistake. I believed too much, and in the wrong person. It was the night of Ryan's company's annual dinner, an event he'd been talking about for weeks. He said it was the most important night of the year, a chance to network, to show the partners that he belonged in their league. For him, it was business. For me, it was a chance to finally make him proud again, to remind him that I could belong in his world too. I spent the entire day preparing. I straightened my hair, did my makeup, and wore a navy blue dress he once said he liked on me. It wasn't designer, but it made me feel elegant. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You'll be fine, Emily. Just smile." When we arrived, everything felt surreal. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above us, waiters moved gracefully with trays of champagne, and laughter echoed from every corner. Everyone looked perfect, polished, powerful, untouchable. Ryan seemed alive in that atmosphere. He shook hands, laughed loudly, introduced me around, but not as my wife, Emily. Just, "This is Emily."
No worms. No pride.
Just words, cold and formal. I tried to make conversation, to blend in. A kind woman sitting across the table complimented me on the bracelet I was wearing, one I had designed myself. I smiled shyly and said, "Oh, thank you. I made it a few weeks ago." That's when it happened. Ryan chuckled and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Yeah, Emily's creative like that. She makes jewelry at home, since she doesn't really have a real job." The entire table laughed. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I wanted to disappear, melt into the floor, vanish into the sound of clinking glasses. I forced a small laugh, but my throat burned. I looked at him, waiting for a glance that said I didn't mean it, but there was nothing. He was enjoying it, the joke, the attention, the validation. One of the men leaned over and said, "You're lucky, Ryan. Most women would be too lazy to even make their own jewelry." More laughter. And in that moment, I realized I was surrounded by people who saw me as nothing more than his accessory. I excused myself and walked to the washroom. The second I closed the door behind me, the noise faded. I looked at my reflection. My eyes were glossy, my lipstick slightly smudged. That woman staring back wasn't me. She was tired, defeated. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath and whispered, "Remember this moment, Emily. Don't forget how it feels." Because deep down I knew this wasn't just humiliation. It was awakening. That night, something inside me shifted. And though he didn't know it yet, that dinner was the beginning of my goodbye. The morning after that dinner, the silence in our house felt heavier than usual. Ryan was humming in the kitchen, sipping coffee, acting as if nothing had happened. I watched him, the man who humiliated me, who laughed while I sat there swallowing my pain, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing, just emptiness. He looked at me briefly and said, "You were too quiet last night. You should try being more social next time. People notice that stuff." I wanted to laugh. Social? I had been fighting tears while he made a joke out of my life, and now he was giving me advice on how to fit in. I went back to our room and sat on the edge of the bed. The dress from last night still hung on the chair, a reminder of everything I had tried to be. Perfect. Presentable. Enough. And yet, nothing I did was ever enough for him. I looked around the room, the house we had decorated together, the framed wedding photos on the wall, the ring on my finger, and it all suddenly felt fake. Every corner whispered lies I had been too blind to see. I packed my bag quietly. Not all of it, just enough to leave without turning back. A few clothes, my sketchbook, my laptop. When I reached for the ring, I hesitated. Then I slipped it off and placed it on the nightstand beside a note. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't long. Just a few words. "You made me feel small. Watch how big I can become without you." I left the house, without looking back. The air outside felt different, raw, cold, but real. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. I didn't go to my parents' house or to a friend's. I wanted to start completely over, away from pity, away from questions. I rented a small studio apartment, one room, peeling paint, and a single window that faced a brick wall. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The first night there, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes and cried, not for him, but for the version of me that stayed too long. For the girl who begged to be seen, who mistook humiliation for love. When morning came, I opened my laptop and started sketching. My hands trembled, but my heart felt alive again. I reached out to old clients, posted my designs online, and decided, even if no one believed in me, I would believe in myself. The world didn't change overnight. Money was tight, clients were few, and there were days I questioned everything. But I had made a promise to myself that I would never go back to a life where I was invisible. That morning, I didn't just leave a house. I left a version of myself behind, the woman who waited for love to fix her. And in her place, a stronger one began to rise. Starting over was harder than I ever imagined. The first few weeks in that small apartment felt like living inside my own silence. The walls were thin, the heater made strange noises at night, and loneliness echoed louder than any sound. But that silence also became my canvas, the space where I could finally hear my own thoughts again. I woke up early every day, brewed the cheapest coffee I could find, and sat by my old laptop, the one that sometimes froze mid-design, and began rebuilding from scratch. I started taking small freelance projects. Some paid barely enough to cover groceries, others didn't pay at all. But I said yes to everything, because I needed experience, exposure, and most importantly, confidence. At night, when exhaustion crept in, I'd look out the window and whisper to myself, "You're doing it, Emily. One day, this will all mean something." Months passed. Slowly, my work started gaining traction. A few of my designs got featured on social media pages, and orders started coming in. People began to recognize my style, bold, emotional, and deeply personal, because every line I drew carried a piece of my story. One day, I received an email from a small jewelry brand. They wanted me to design their entire visual identity, logo, packaging, everything. It wasn't a huge project, but it was my first real break. I poured my heart into it. Every night, I'd stay awake sketching concepts until sunrise, revising, perfecting, pushing myself. When the brand launched, their sales skyrocketed, and they gave me credit for their new look. Suddenly, more companies started reaching out. I went from a struggling freelancer to a designer people wanted to work with. Within 2 years, I saved enough to open my own small studio, EP Designs. At first, it was just me, a secondhand desk, and 2 interns who believed in my dream even when I doubted it. We worked long hours, lived on instant noodles, and celebrated every little win like it was magic. And then one day it happened. A major fashion label noticed my work online and reached out for a collaboration. When I read their email, my hands trembled. That was the moment I realized I had built something real. Something mine. From there, everything changed. My name started circulating in industry circles, interviews followed, and clients I once dreamed of working for were now calling me. I upgraded my studio, hired a full team, and finally moved into a bright apartment that overlooked the city skyline. Every corner of it reminded me of how far I'd come, from crying on the floor to owning my freedom. Ryan's laughter used to echo in my memory. But now, my office buzzed with the sound of ambition, creativity, and women like me, rebuilding after being broken. I didn't just build a business. I built an empire from the ruins of my heartbreak. 3 years had passed since I walked out of that house, since I left Ryan and the life that suffocated me. In that time, I had built something no one could take away, a thriving design agency, a team of ambitious women, and a life I could call entirely my own. I was confident, elegant, and stronger than I had ever been. But I didn't expect him to appear again, especially not at the one event where I was going to speak to hundreds of people about my journey. It was a gala, a prestigious industry event filled with lights, cameras, and people who mattered. I arrived wearing a deep emerald dress, my hair styled simply, my posture radiating control. The room buzzed with conversations, but I felt calm, grounded, untouchable. After my speech, as people congratulated me, I caught a glimpse of him across the room. Ryan, standing in the back, leaning against a pillar, scanning the crowd. I could see the surprise in his eyes when he realized who I was, and then the hesitation. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but somehow diminished, as if the arrogance and pride he carried before had been stripped away. I felt a strange mix of emotions, a flicker of old memories, but mostly satisfaction. He had no idea what I had become. He approached me, trying to mask his surprise with a smile. "Emily, wow. I didn't know you'd come this far." I smiled politely, letting him see just enough warmth to keep the encounter civil, but not enough to let him forget the past. That's because you never believed I could. He hesitated, then tried to joke, hoping to charm me the way he once did. You look amazing, as always. I mean, it's been a while. I could feel the tension between us, the years of dismissal, laughter, and ridicule condensed into this moment. He reached out, perhaps hoping for familiarity, for connection, but I didn't move closer. Can we maybe talk sometime? He asked quietly, almost pleading. I looked him straight in the eyes. For a moment, I saw the man I once loved, the man who made promises he couldn't keep. And then I remembered the dinner, the mocking words, the humiliation that had fueled me to leave. Ryan, the woman you mocked doesn't exist anymore, I said firmly, my voice steady. The one standing here, you could never afford her. He opened his mouth to speak, but I turned and walked away. Every step felt liberating, a declaration that I was no longer bound by his judgment or opinion. As I moved through the crowd, I noticed subtle glances from other guests, admiration, respect, recognition. I realized then that my life, my achievements, and my dignity were my true power. No words, no explanations, and no revenge could match the quiet triumph of living fully for myself. That night, I didn't look back. Ryan faded into the background, a shadow of a past I had survived and transformed. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. After that night at the gala, I felt an unshakable sense of closure. Ryan had glimpsed the life I had built, the woman I had become, but he could not touch it, could not claim it, could not even understand it. It was mine. Every decision, every sleepless night, every sacrifice had led to this, a life so rich in freedom, achievement, and self-respect that no one, especially him, could ever take it away. I had started with a tiny studio apartment, a flickering laptop, and nothing but my skills and determination. Today, my agency, EP Designs, had 20 employees, high-profile international clients, and a reputation for bold, creative innovation. Every project I completed carried my signature touch, meticulous, daring, and authentic, a reflection of the woman who refused to be silenced. I traveled frequently for work, staying in places I had once only dreamed of visiting. I dined at restaurants he could never afford, attended events he would never be invited to, and moved freely in circles that once seemed impenetrable. But the most important part of this life wasn't the money, the status, or the luxury. It was the freedom, the ability to wake up every day knowing I was living on my own terms. Even my apartment overlooked the city skyline, bathed in sunlight during the day and twinkling lights at night. Every corner reminded me of my journey. The nights I cried on the floor, the days I worked until my hands ached, the moments I doubted myself but pushed forward anyway. I had created a world where I was in control, and that control was priceless. Ryan sometimes tried to reach out, emails, messages, occasional social media likes. He would write things like, "I'm proud of you," or "You've changed." But I didn't respond, because this life wasn't built for him, and it wasn't built to prove anything to anyone. It was built for me. And the truth is, he never could have afforded it. Not because it was expensive, but because it required resilience, courage, and a refusal to settle for less than self-respect, qualities he had never valued and had never nurtured in himself. The dinners, the mocking words, the humiliation, all of it had been fuel for my rise. Every step I took away from him, every night I chose to work instead of cry, every decision I made to invest in myself built a fortress around my success, and he had no key. Now, when I look back, I don't feel anger. I don't feel bitterness. I feel power. The power that comes from walking away from the life you're supposed to live and choosing the life you deserve. I live fully, freely, and unapologetically. I surround myself with people who uplift me, opportunities that challenge me, and work that inspires me. And somewhere deep down, I know that Ryan will never be able to understand the richness of this life because it's built on courage, not control. This is the life he could never afford. And the best part? I get to wake up in it every single day. If you're watching this right now and you've ever felt small, unseen, or unappreciated, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not too much. You are not too loud, too ambitious, too sensitive, too emotional, or too smart. The problem has never been you. The problem has always been the people who fail to see your worth, who mistake love for control or laughter for loyalty. I know what it feels like to sit quietly at a table while your partner mocks you in front of everyone. I know the ache of walking home, pretending it doesn't hurt, and wondering if leaving means losing your life as you know it. I know the fear of starting over, of risking everything for the promise of yourself. But I also know this: there is power in walking away. There is strength in choosing yourself over someone who does not value you. There is freedom in creating a life that reflects your dreams instead of someone else's ego. To every woman listening, I want you to understand: leaving isn't failure. It's courage. It's the first step toward reclaiming your dignity, your voice, and your future. Start small if you must. Take one step, one choice, one action every day that prioritizes you. Build your skills, your independence, your confidence. Even if no one believes in you, believe in yourself. Even if it takes years, persistence wins. Remember, revenge is not about hurting someone else. Revenge is about rising above. It's about building a life so rich in success, happiness, and fulfillment that no one, not the people who laughed at you, mocked you, or doubted you, can ever touch it. I am living proof. The woman Ryan mocked, the one he laughed at during that luxury dinner, is gone. In her place stands a woman who is confident, accomplished, and unapologetically herself. A woman whose life cannot be measured by anyone else's approval. A woman whose worth is inherent and undeniable. So if you are listening to this story, know this: you deserve respect. You deserve happiness. You deserve to be seen, celebrated, and cherished by yourself first, and then by the people who are worthy of your presence. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for validation. Do not wait for someone else to change. Choose yourself. Build yourself. Love yourself. And one day, you will look back on the person who doubted you, mocked you, or held you back, and instead of bitterness, you will feel pride. Pride in the life you created. Pride in the woman you became. Pride in the unstoppable force that is you. This is my message to you, every woman who has ever felt less than she deserves. You are enough. You are worthy. You are unstoppable.
Rise.
Always rise. If this story touched you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories of love, betrayal, and strength.